Hello everyone, thank you for joining us and welcome back to another edition of MOE's Facebook Live session, Ask Me Anything About Parenting Teens. My name is Wen Li and I will be your host for today. So as the title of the session suggests, today we'll be deep diving into the topic of parenting our teens and we'll touch on three key topics. Firstly, ways of communication with teens, where we hope to offer strategies that parents could try out to encourage your teens to open up to share about their thoughts and feelings, and also sharing online trends that teens are currently interested in. So secondly, we will also chat with our panelists about mental well-being and navigating challenging behaviours. Most importantly, we want to hear from you, our audience back at home, about your experiences in parenting teens. To help us get to know you a little bit better, share with us how old your child is and use 1 to 2 words to describe your experience of parenting a teenager down in the comment section below. So, of course, the age range for teens is typically between 13 to 19 years of age, but I'm sure that we have viewers here who might have younger children and who might be watching as well, and your younger children might also be behaving like teenagers. So we also welcome you to comment in the comment box below too. Alright, so now let's turn to our panel for tonight. With us tonight, we have Dr. Yvonne, Dr. Lambert, and Claudia. So can we invite each of you here to briefly introduce yourself? So let's start with Dr. Yvonne first.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Yvonne. I'm a counselling psychologist working mainly with young people facing social, emotional, or behavioural difficulties. Personally, for me, parenting teens is a learning journey.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lambert. I'm a psychiatrist working in the field of addictions. And in my day-to-day work, I help individuals suffering from any types of addictions, including youth who suffer from sometimes gaming addiction or even possibly any substances of abuse. Yeah, so happy to speak about it. I don't have teens yet. My kids are quite young, but I'm happy to share from my experience of working with teens. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Claudia. So currently I'm an undergraduate at NUS. I'm studying social work. I'm in year 1. Aside from that, I also run an organization called Pathfinders that seeks to nurture the next generation of underprivileged Gen Zs to tomorrow's leaders. So I'm not a parent, but I have done about 4 years of work with youth. So they confide with me a lot about their challenges with parents. So I'm here to contribute my views.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here with us today, panelists. During our chat, please feel free to use the chipping in and on the other hand sticks over there if you hear something that you would like to add on to or offer a differing perspective to. Alright, so as we move along the session, for our audience back at home, please feel free to type in any questions you may have for the panelists as we go along the session. So to make this a comfortable space for us to grow together, we ask that you only ask questions that are related to the topic and also be respectful in asking your questions. If you have any tips to share with fellow parents, please feel free to type them out in the comment section below as well so that we can all benefit from the collective wisdom of everyone here. So before we begin the session, let's warm up with a little game. We do have some teen lingo there here on the table, and because Claudia, right, our Gen Z representative, will surely ace this test, let's have Claudia ask the questions. And Dr. Yvonne and Dr. Lambert will guess the answers. So we will end this game when the first person gets 2 correct answers. So for viewers back at home, if you know the teen lingo as well, please feel free to type your answers in the comment box below. So whenever you are ready, Claudia.
Okay, thank you, Wen Li. Okay, are you ready, Dr. Yvonne and Dr. Lambert?
For sure.
Okay, so let me choose one. Okay. This one.
Or give us a clue.
It's got to do with like someone's image, how it comes across.
So
Like the vibes of someone's vibes.
so there's a glow in that person.
Something like that. Almost there.
Attractive, mesmerizing.
I'm guessing it's the other way.
No, it's positive.
It's positive.
It's
Okay.
positive.
Say
Very
like,
attractive quality.
Magnetic. Is it magnetic? Kind of?
okay, I'll give it to both of you. So actually, like, it refers to how cool somebody is. So like usually like teens like to say like, oh, you have like very good aura, or I like your aura. It means like, oh, you're very cool. It's a very good compliment actually. Should go home and tell your chin. Okay, good. So both of them have 1 point. Okay, let me try to do one more. Okay.
Slay.
It's a very good experience. Something to the effect.
Like slay the day.
Yeah, so how do you apply it? Why do you say slay the day?
So you've done a lot of the day, you've done something meaningful, you've made the most of the day. Is that something like that?
Okay, something along those lines. So it's about slaying, means you do like a spectacular job about something. So that means like, okay, some teens like to say like slay queen. So like, for example, you're talking to their female friends, then they'll be like, oh, you're going to slay like the test or like something like that. Yeah, so slay. Okay, can. Shall we do one more, last one?
Sure, let's do one more.
Okay, it's not my favorite. This is my favorite.
Good looking,
Almost there.
very attractive.
Charismatic?
Yes, charismatic. Correct. Yeah, so it's short for charisma. Yeah. So usually like when like teens flirt to each other, like we'll be like, oh, that guy has a lot of risk because like let's say he flirted with somebody else. Yeah. Charisma. Okay.
So thank you, Claudia, and our panelists, and good job to all of the viewers at home who have answered the questions correctly. So I'm sure like we have learned something new today, and we can actually use this in our daily vocab now. Okay, so we hope all of you are now warmed up and are ready for our session today. Our first poll today is to find out what viewers are curious about. Many of us are parents of teenagers from 13 to 17 years old, and quite a number are 11 to 12 years old. In descending order, it seems that most people are interested in the common trends and challenges that teens encounter at about 59%. 20% of you are interested in ways to communicate effectively with teens, and another 20% of you are interested in supporting teens in making good decisions. So we'll be having a few more polls coming up, so do keep a lookout for these polls and participate actively in them. So viewers who have just joined us at this point, welcome. Keep those questions for our panelists coming so that our panelists can offer insights for us all to learn and grow together. Okay, so while all of us are busy typing your questions to our panelists, a common refrain that we often hear from parents is, my children don't listen to me anymore, my children have no time for me. So does this sound familiar to you? So type yes in the comment box if you are experiencing this as a parent. So perhaps can I Dr. Lambert first?
Okay. Yeah, I think, thanks for the question. I think one of the more common behavioral changes that teens experience is that about finding their own identity, being able to come into this society, this world on their own, being able to be sort of accepted for who they are, and finding their place in the world, so to speak of. So I think this is one of the common developmental journeys that teens will go through, and maybe that's part of the reason why they are not too keen to constantly talk to their parents, because they want to find out who they are on their own. It's this time of identity formation, it's this time of being able to be independent. So in a way, part of that is a form of growing up, and so parents don't be too upset if that happens, because that shows that there's some sign of maturity that's actually already undergoing, and maybe it's a good thing for them to sort of be able to develop that sort of independence, and therefore you can be in a way relieved in a sense, because then they are forming their own identities and becoming sort of a mini adult, in that sense. Yeah.
So thanks for sharing your insights, Dr. Lambert. Perhaps we can hear from Dr. Yvonne as well.
I think for this age group of, individuals, they are also looking to be included in social groups. As they kind of individuate from their parents, I think socialization is becoming increasingly important to them. That's why you will hear them saying, I want to hang out with my friends, I want to do things with my friends. But also on the ground, we're also increasingly hearing more and more kids telling us that they are lonely. They're somewhat connected on social media, but they are not connected, relationally with the people around them.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Yvonne. So let's move on to Claudia. So as an undergrad, right, you were a teen not too long ago yourself. right? So do you experience these changes as a teen? And if so, how do you manage them?
I think I really related when Dr. Lambert was talking about us finding our own identity, right? Frankly speaking, like, I'm still finding it. I think the journey from all the struggles you teens go through, right, goes actually into their 20s. So it's like a lifelong, I feel like it's a long journey before like we actually settle down on like who we are. And it's not just, this journey doesn't just stop once we finish like teenagehood, even though like now I'm a young adult technically, right? But it's still an ongoing journey, and I really appreciate like the space given to me to navigate this. So I think like how parents can support this process would be to like respect your child's need for space. Don't take everything as an attack, like, oh, you don't want to spend time with me. And maybe ask them like, how are you doing? What's going on? What's the highlight of your week? Stuff like that. Show interest in like what's going on for them. But very importantly, don't have a hidden agenda when you have these conversations. So don't be like, oh, your exams are coming, right? Or how do you do for the test? So make sure like it's actually a genuine conversation that you want to know them. So if not, like your teens will know that, oh, you're just asking me because you want to know how I did for my exam, or how this is going, or what am I doing in my life. So make sure you just have like a real genuine conversation with them, because like honestly, your kids definitely love you. A child's love is very pure. So they just want to know that you care for them beyond academics, beyond their pursuits, and just who they are as people lah. Yeah.
So thanks very much for sharing, Claudia. I think Claudia has provided like some very useful tips for parents to approach their teens. Okay, so actually now we do have a question from To Hua Ng to everyone on the floor, right? At this stage, they are reluctant to open up. So anyone would like to take a step at this question?
Go first.
Yeah, perhaps we can start with Dr. Lambert first.
So I think I will just latch on to what Claudia had said earlier about showing an interest in what they are doing. So for instance, if it may be something that you may not like, for instance, a person, your child might be gaming on the screen, which sometimes my patients have, but use it as an opportunity to sort of understand more about that gameplay. So for instance, they may be playing Fortnite, League of Legends, find out what is it doing for them. You know, are they making online friends there? You know, their character, what characters are they using, what avatars are they using? Get a bit interested in the gameplay so that you are knowledgeable and able to use that to sort of form a meaningful conversation with them. And once they sense that genuine interest, that you're really interested in their lives, then perhaps they would share more about the other aspects of it with you. So
Yeah, so riding on what they both have shared, I think two words are coming to mind. Be interested in your child rather than interrogate them. Because sometimes when we are anxious, we might approach them wanting to find out answers like what Claudia said about exam results, about who they're mixing with. And that can get quite traumatic if we ask too many questions too quickly. But I think if we observe what's happening in their lives, ask questions that are relevant to them in their lives, I think that's a good start for a meaningful conversation.
How about Claudia? I think Dr. Lambert talked about gaming, right? So I just recently learned about this. So like a lot of people view gaming addiction like as a very bad thing, right? But actually I recently learned that you should observe your child as they're gaming, because sometimes they are the one small things you can overlook. For example, are they the one like shouting, giving the commands in the game? So because it actually shows leadership in your child. But is your child a natural introvert, but does gaming bring out this part of them? So it's like looking at these problems and trying to see them in like different ways, like seeing the different skills that your child has that you haven't actually noticed before. So like this is something recently that I've learned. So not everything is a negative thing. So like let's say they're not spending a lot of time at home. So maybe they tell you they're spending a lot of time in school, they're doing projects, which is very normal when your child like hits to IHL. There's a lot of schoolwork that needs to be done outside of school hours. Instead of blaming them for not coming home early, demanding them to stay at home and have family time, maybe you should show concern about their well-being. Ask them, like, have they eaten? Would they like to come home? Invite them for like a meal. Show interest in their well-being instead of just reprimanding them or like scolding them for all these bad traits that they show lah. I think when you really show your kids that you appreciate them for who they are, that's when they will start to open up to you more and start trusting you again.
So thank you so much for sharing, panelists. So I think the common word here is being interested and being genuine in your interactions with your kids, and also learning how to strike a fine balance between interrogating them and really just wanting to find out more about their lives. Right, so actually we have another question from another viewer from Vanita Street.
Many years back, right, a question was asked of us to kind of do a project to figure out a couple of things. One of the questions was, why do teenagers not want to share with adults, right, their challenges or their difficulties? Was this just a developmental phase where they individuated, or were there other issues? So I had this privilege of actually interviewing quite a number of young people, and these were some of the answers that they shared with us. First thing first, right, the teenagers think, right, that our experiences are not relevant to their current life challenges. So, one good example was, people are all on TikTok, and if they have conflicts, right, they stop following their friends. But in our time, we will say, let's have a meaningful conversation with your friends and sort things out. That piece of advice, right, while well-meaning, the kids are telling us, hey, it's not entirely relevant to our context. I guess the second thing as to why they sometimes don't want to listen to us, because I think somewhere, somehow in their mind, there is an assumption that the piece of advice carries with it a disapproval, or sometimes also the piece of advice carries with it some sort of perhaps unhappiness with his current choices. I think before a piece of advice can be given, two things I would reflect on. Number one, relevance. Number two, when I convey it, do I convey it with love? Do I convey it affirmatively, or does it carry with it some kind of judgment or kind of a harsh tone? Now, he cannot handle his emotions well. If this is a question of emotional regulation, I might want to ask myself, what is triggering this child? Because if hearing something triggers this child, there is a driver to this emotion. Maybe making an observation and over time understanding what that trigger might be is the start of helping this child better able to express his emotions. Sometimes kids have told me, when I don't feel seen or heard, I have to resort to screaming or shouting or yelling to get my point across. Maybe we just have to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is the function of sometimes that emotional dysregulation?
So Dr. Lambert, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I think I mean, I relate to this because I also come from the school of hard knocks, having a very, very tough parenting when I was growing up. So, but nowadays I feel that there's a sort of a generational shift in the sense that people don't want to hear that you know more than them. You have, there's Chinese saying, right, you eat more salt than the other person eats rice. Like, they don't like this kind of top-down, I know more than you kind of approach. In fact, the teens now, they're sort of becoming smarter in a way because they read more, they have a lot of online access to material, right? So they form their own impressions quite fast, and with that, I think the opinions also form relatively fast. So in a sense, it might be a bit difficult to come across as knowing everything and trying to impart wisdom, like imparting kung fu like that. Rather, sometimes meeting them in the middle will come a long way. So for instance, in my clinic, sometimes when patients, when family members bring their children or their youth to the clinic setting and they always say that they can't get through to them, can you speak some sense into my child? Sometimes, I will invite the parents to maybe move away from the consult room. I have individual sessions with them later on, but I'll speak personally to the child. Sort of come across from a genuine point of understanding, so as to start off from the footing that we are equals. That I'm not somebody who has eaten more salt than you, and maybe that will get them to sort of in a way ease up to you, sort of in a way lower their guard a bit more, because they know that you don't come from a mentality of trying to preach to them. So I think perhaps that would be easier to break down walls in that sense.
Right, that's really interesting. So Claudia, from a youth perspective, would you agree with what Dr. Lambert and Dr. Yvonne has said? And ideally, what strategy would actually appeal to you?
Okay. Yeah, actually I do agree with them. I think that in the Asian culture, like I think we are usually brought up with the mindset that our parents know better than us lah. And I think another thing from the youth perspective, right? Probably like your son might be thinking like, oh, but I'm not asking you for advice. Maybe your son needs a listening ear, or maybe he just wants you to comfort him. And usually boys are not one to say I need comfort or I need support. So maybe maybe how I would help actually is if you like were there for your son instead of advising him. So like treat it as more of like you're his friend, maybe instead of his mother, and don't advise him. Usually a lot of children don't take their parents' advice, but they will take the advice other people give them very easily. I do a lot of work with like youths who don't really listen to their parents or don't really regulate their emotions very well. So what they have actually shared about creating that safe environment and making sure your child knows like my parents still views me as an equal compared to them. There is no like comparison or divide. That will really comfort your child a lot. And probably your child would come to you whenever like they feel like they need some reassurance or they need some support. And about the emotion regulation, I think teenagehood is where a lot of teens learn to regulate themselves and their emotions. And like there are going to be a bunch of times where they can't do it very well. So there's a lot of mistakes that they're going to be making during this period. So I think a lot of patience is needed as they navigate this new transition in their life. And I think it's more about, it's good that you're actually very concerned about your child and how you want to be there for him and everything. And I'm sure he appreciates you, but maybe he's not able to express that part of himself lah. So I really advise if you just probably give him that safe space, maybe invite him for a meal, indulge in some of his interests that he likes, create that safe space. And usually when you're doing activity together, that's when a child usually opens up. They need that time to open up to you and tell you what's actually going on. Yeah.
So thanks, panelists. I think they have all provided very good advice. We have another question from our viewer, Mom Our Cool, to everyone on the floor here. So I think this is a very common phenomenon, right, that parents face. So perhaps we could start with Dr. Yvonne, since your name was mentioned in the question.
Okay, similar struggles at home. Busy teenager with a lot of work commitments and projects and friends to hang around with. For me, catching him at the right time makes a lot of difference because he's not always ready to speak. So catching him at the right time is, for me, a very pivotal thing. So the question for us will then be, when is the right time? I think the right time is not when he's in between a game. The right time is not when he is basically, furiously looking at his phone and texting his friends. The right time for me sometimes is just before bedtime when everything is put down and I go into the room and I say, hi, I love you. Just want to ask, is everything okay? Or going in again, in the mornings, looking at him, preparing for school, giving him a smile and says, I love you, have a great day. If there's something that you need me to be aware of today, you can share with me. I realized that for many of these teenagers, it's about extending the olive branch. They may not always pick it up immediately, but I think you're sowing the seeds for conversation later on.
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Dr. Yvonne has said. Finding the right time is opportune time for you to sort of be able to breach that conversation. But also, I think don't be too hard on yourself. Is what I'm going to say, because not everybody is able to connect even with their loved ones all the time. Because sometimes there's just too many things going on in the mind, right? The mind is just so clouded. Very often I see that communication is not happening. It could be because fundamentally, they come from very different perspectives. So it's still two different, although they are part of you in a way, they are extension, but they are also different individuals. And sometimes, if you grow up or you have different environments growing up, then it's not easy to make that connection. But I think the youth appreciates you trying. Your child will definitely feel that love and appreciate you trying. So even if he says, I don't know, don't take it to heart. Always not let it affect you from trying again. Because the more you try, the more he or she will feel the love and therefore be able to relate to you at some other point in time when the time is right in that sense.
Okay, so don't give up. Yes. Yeah. So perhaps you can hear a little bit from Claudia.
Okay, so I think I do agree with Dr. Yvonne about how when you're open and you offer the olive branch, you're actually sowing the seeds. Because often enough, youths are going through things, but they're not going to tell you immediately what it is. They're going through a lot in their head already about what's going on. And they need some time to settle in with themselves about what they actually think and how they actually feel before they actually like open up to you. So it would really help if you probably apply the strategies that Dr. Yvonne recommended. And I think with teens also, there's a lot going on in their lives, in their mind, even puberty and all that stuff, right? And it really would help if they knew like, okay, when I'm ready, I can tell my parent what's going on. And I think what would really help is like hang out with your child, like maybe go out with them for meals or do an activity together. I don't think a lot of parents do this with their teens, but I do know some of my friends who do it with their parents, very, very few. But I think that when we practice mindful communication and when we hang out mindfully with your children, that's when they actually realize that my parent actually values the relationship with me and they support me becoming my own better self. Yeah.
So thank you very much, panelists, for sharing your very useful insights on communication strategies. So before we dive into the next topic, I think just now some of the panelists shared about social media as well. Right, we have to recognize that social media is actually a way of life for many of our teenagers today. So perhaps we could start with Dr. Lambert.
Okay, interesting question because social media in my time is very different from the social media now. I saw with probably Facebook, and then now there's all these TikToks and all that. So it looks a bit different. It's more edgy, it's more fast-paced. Yeah, and it's used to be, instead of still pictures, now it's videos and all that. So I think as with any sort of communication tool, there are both sides of the coin. It's both a vessel for good, as well as if you use it wrongly, you get overindulgent in it, then it kind of affects your mentality and your psyche. So I think social media has its positives in the sense that people now can make a profession out of social media. They can be professional YouTubers, professional TikTokers, and there's all this fads going on, which is in a way a new part of our life. So I think we got to come to learn to adapt to it. But at the same time, if you get overindulgent, there are terms like doom scrolling and all that, where you just spend mundaneless hours doing sort of post after post, getting through the feeds, then it becomes detrimental. So I think probably balance is a good way to go about it. Some people find information from social media, so that's where they get their news. So I think having a little bit of it, being able to still spend the time that you need with your family and friends and doing outdoor activities, you can still sort of have it, but don't overindulge in it, is what I would probably say.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Lambert. Perhaps you can hear from either Claudia or Dr. Yvonne on this.
So actually, how about social media, right? So actually, it's quite relevant to me because, I'm a teen, but actually about 2 months ago, I went off social media, like I deactivated all my accounts because like I was going through a major life transition in my life, entering uni and like all these different things that was happening. And why I decided to do that, because I felt like social media was not helping me to focus and there was a lot of noise. And already life can be quite noisy with all the commitments, right? And social media also feeds you like a lot of different content. So I decided to delete and go like offline, off the grid, because I needed to focus on all the things that was happening in my life. And what I have concluded about social media, now that I'm back on it after the break, is that you really need to be mindful about the kind of content that you consume and the kind of like influences you follow. And because it really dictates like it really influences who you become and also influences your thoughts. But I think social media has also had a lot of good in my life in terms of teaching me like maybe how to speak better, how to be like a better friend, how to be like a better like partner, how to be a better sister. And I think all these things social media has taught me, I didn't really learn like in school, I didn't really learn at home. So it's really good to like expand my horizons. It even got me thinking about what are some of my even like career options that are available for me. And like the main reason that I'm actually here in this live stream is because like I made a video on social media about my educational pathway. So I think social media, like Dr. Lambert mentioned, can be used for good, but also can affect teens in bad way, like how it affected me. So I needed to cut it out to focus more on like what I was going through. And I think like controlling teens' behavior in terms of their social media usage. Of course, your teen isn't going to like it very much. I think it's something that they need to realize for themselves. And you cannot be the one to control like their social media usage. Because teens don't like to be controlled. Very natural. If you say no, they're going to rebel against you. So some of the mistakes your teens make, they have to make it by themselves so that in the end of the day, they will know what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Yeah.
So thanks so much for sharing. I think the key here is really, as with anything, right, there's always good and bad, and social media as well. So the key here, I think, is really to really partake in social media in moderation, and also really to find out, to sometimes it's really just good to focus on what really matters. Okay, so we have a last question from, let's move on to talk about mental well-being issues. Okay, we have a question from Destiny Desiree to Yvonne.
I think for me, the answer will be I'm seeing a little bit more of kids who are struggling with anxiety or depression, but I'm not sure if this is normal. But for the kids who basically may have challenges, right? When they face challenges, they get into a panic situation or they get depressed. Typically, I would say that there are certain risk factors that predispose them to getting anxiety or depression. Firstly, the lack of what I call safe and secure attachment. Really, the kids who are able to say someone sees me, someone hears me, and someone is on my side, I think that's a huge protective factor. The second thing for me, whereby I think that will really help kids, right, is the development of their social emotional competencies. Social emotional competencies are basically skills that they can pick up to develop their own self-awareness, their own self-management, over time be socially more aware, manage their relationships, and then make decisions that are congruent to them. And so these skill sets also help them basically, right, protect them, I would say, from getting anxiety or depression. So for most of the kids that I see in the clinic that actually do have, I guess, anxiety or depression, sometimes really working on just finding that one safe relationship, equipping them with 1-2 skills to handle the challenges, and we can see them actually getting better. But that one person who is on their side, regardless, despite, I think really makes a huge difference.
Okay, so that's really interesting, Dr. Yvonne. We have another question from Kian Ing Lee. So I think this is a very common concern among parents. So it would be very helpful if our panelists could try to answer this question. So perhaps we could start with Dr. Lambert.
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think indeed some parents say that if a doctor says it or if a counselor says it, it's going to be much more, in a way, they feel it's much more impactful for their kids. Not sure whether that's true entirely, because actually from my understanding, the best counselors are generally those who are, in a way, know the child the best. Yeah, the ones closest to you, usually friends, if not family members, tend to be able to understand you better. They already have that foundation to start off with of knowing you as a person and being able to provide the right advice. So in terms of counselling, because I also do a bit of counselling, the first few sessions, generally speaking, are really about building that rapport with the person. So not a lot of things sort of get accomplished in the first, what we call the intake session, where you try to understand the person as an individual. So I'm also not sure that this is entirely right in the sense that the doctors or the counselors are indeed the best people to provide that counselors. No doubt there will be a certain group of people that, you know, if the parents are finding it very hard, then maybe a third party would be more useful. But in a sense that, I mean, I do empathize, and, you know, I hear that, you know, this, you know, you're having a hard time counseling the child. So if that's the case really, then maybe there may be underlying reasons behind it. And indeed, sometimes a third party may be more useful. But that's not to say that generally having a third party is going to be useful all the time. Because I've also seen cases that counselors also cannot get through to that to that child, and they had to repeatedly change counselors just to be able to find the right fit for that counselor to get across. So maybe sometimes it's just finding the right person to be able to make sense to that, to your child, or to that individual.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Yvonne, I understand you do counselling on a daily basis, right? Do you see this happening in your practice? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I do see kids being dragged into the clinic. And my first question to them, when I see their face, I would ask them, "You were dragged in?" And they were like, "Yeah, I got dragged in." And then I think it's really, for me at that time, it's validating that discomfort about having to be put in to see somebody whom they really don't feel like seeing at this point in their lives. I mean, that's something that I have to work with when I see a child who is reluctant and seek to understand his or her reluctance. But I saw a question here that is interesting. If we go for counselling without our children, will it be helpful? My answer to you is yes, it can be helpful. Because sometimes as a parent, speaking for myself, I may not be able to understand certain issues that my son is facing. Maybe because I'm relying on my own past assumptions and my own past experience with my own child. Having someone offer me some new insights or give me some strategy, right, to start building or rebuilding my relationship with my child, or to see how to support my child in his or her difficulty, can be helpful. So even without the kid, if the parent is able to have more insights, more awareness, some strategies, that too may be the start of helping the child indirectly.
So thanks very much for your insights. We do have quite a number of questions from our viewers on the topic of screen use and how it is very distracting from their children's time to learn and study. So I think this is a very common concern again right now with the proliferation of PLDs in school. So could we just direct the question to anyone on the floor here? Perhaps Claudia would like to share with us?
Okay. Yeah, I think like I face a lot of this like when I conduct programs with youths and when they're not interested in like what's going on, then they revert to their phone, or we use them to use their phone for the assignments. So how I manage this, right, is that I give them a time limit. So I tell them like, okay, use your phone for this, but you have maybe 30 minutes to complete this. If in 30 minutes it's not done, then of course like you have to explain to me why it's not done. Do you not understand it, stuff like that. So when I instill like time limits for certain tasks or assignments, then they know that okay, I have to get it done within this time limit. If not, like I might get scolded or something like that, right? So when you give them like time limits, you also trust them like using their phone at the same time, so they know that okay, I have to get the work done, then I can use my phone later. But if they abuse like the freedom they give you in terms of like they can complete this homework maybe like in the whole week. The deadline is like the end of the week. They say they'll be doing the same assignment the entire week. I've heard like stories about this too. Then they haven't get it done yet. So it's very common for like these things to happen. So what I really recommend is that when you instill like deadlines for them to follow, and usually like it's quite I would say it works very well, especially with the kids that I work with as young as primary school all the way until like secondary school. Like when you give them the time limit, even if they use their phones for non-school work after the work is done, like that's fine because they've already completed the work that they need to do. So in a way, like I'm not controlling them, I'm just saying them and managing expectations and communicating to them like, okay, you can use it, but you have to complete this within a certain time frame. Yeah, that's like one tip that works for me.
Okay, Dr. Yvonne and Dr. Lambert, anything to add on to that?
Okay, to be honest, right, this is a difficult question even for myself, because I think the kids are pretty good at multitasking these days. They can be talking to their friends on Discord and gaming and at the same time be doing something else. So I really find it quite challenging to say when you're doing work, you shouldn't have anything else on, because if I walk away, I come back, right, they are on that something else. For me is if he gets the work done, if the child gets the work done, the child is getting enough sleep, it's not affecting his relationships, and it's not also affecting her mental health in any way. I think that's something that I've kind of recognized that with quite a number of teenagers, they're actually able to manage this better than I can. Yeah, in terms of that multitasking. But important thing is to know what are they doing online and why are they using that screen so much. Because for me, screen use, right, definitely there's a function to that behavior. Is it for attention? You know, is it to get some gains in terms of achievement or validation? You know, is it for, you know, the purpose of connecting with people? So if we understand why they are perpetually on that screen and what is the need they're trying to kind of meet, that may help us see if we can address meeting those needs outside of the screen.
Thanks for sharing, Dr. Yvonne and Claudia. So we have a question directed to Dr. Lambert.
Indeed, you know, with the recent reports in Straits Times and all about vaping, you know, I think it's something that is increasingly a concern. So I think vaping, I mean, the active ingredient usually is nicotine. So is it going to be another different, I mean, another sort of addiction, another way of obtaining? In the past, it used to be from cigarettes. Now teens are enticed by the gadgets. So I think first and foremost, like with any sorts of addiction, is sort of getting to understand what does it do for that individual. So why is your child, in the sense, use vaping? You know, what circumstances led to him or her vaping? Similar to how we approach, like for instance, gaming. What does gaming serve a purpose? What does it do? Is your child you know, addicted to nicotine? Is it using it habitually? So try to find out a bit, get a sensing of why he or she is using the e-cigarette. Is important to build that sort of trust and understanding. Yeah, so I think many parents naturally get worried because you see something that's illegal and you sort of thinking, you know, how should I approach this? Do I throw it away? Do I, do I inform the principal? You know, many a times the school discipline masters are sometimes the ones that refer the child for treatment. So to be honest, understanding and you know, showing some genuine concern and interest in why the child is vaping without naturally being too judgmental about it would help to start off that conversation. And if the child is indeed addicted to nicotine and needs further treatment, then perhaps coming to National Addictions Management Service would be useful. But beyond coming to National Addictions Management, there's other help available from the school counsellors, the school health advisors. So perhaps that should be the first port of call in a way, because so then it feels less threatening to come to a tertiary centre for treatment when you could sort of manage it in the school, and maybe the child be more reassured that there is there's not something grievously wrong with me that I need to seek help for, and maybe the school itself is able to help me in this regard. So, but showing that interest, as well as maybe offering something in between, like maybe help from the school counselling would help in a way more easily. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Dr. Lambert. I think we have another question that is related to that from Tan Bao Yvonne.
Yeah, okay, so I guess it's good that there's more awareness of this gaming disorder out there right now. But I must also say that as a provider in a tertiary institution, the truth is that not everyone needs to sort of come to NAMS for treatment. There are a lot of agencies, social service agencies, for instance, Touch Community Services, that is doing good work. There are agencies like We Care that also does good work in terms of managing behavioural addictions, gaming disorder in the community, and therefore not necessarily having to come to NAMS for that sort of tertiary level input. So it really depends on the severity of that condition. And many times I would say that even centres like One Hope Counselling Centre, they do offer treatments for behavioural interventions. And if it's adequately managed there, then you don't necessarily have to come to NAMS for treatment. Of course, at NAMS, we have a multidisciplinary team. We are able to provide biopsychosocial interventions that help children with gaming disorder as well as comorbid conditions like depression, anxiety. So if it's a very, very complex case, then I would say, yes, it's possible to come to NAMS, and you probably should come to NAMS. It's very, very complicated, and you have comorbid attention deficit, conduct disorder, learning difficulties, all these come together, then you need a specialist input, then perhaps come to us. But for the vast majority of cases, I would say counselling centres out there will be able to provide that help to your child, and then you will not be so worried about having it on his permanent medical records and stuff like that. Of course, once you touch base with any medical institution, it will be on some form of medical records. But I do assure you that all these records are, to your, it's your own medical confidentiality. So people cannot access it unless you make it known to them. Yeah, so rest assured that doctors and the team will work to the best of the patient's confidentiality. So we won't divulge the information unless it's required a form of medical report with your consent. So not to worry about that. Yeah, but the vast majority of cases can be handled by professional counselling centres and counsellors outside as well. So yeah.
Actually, I want to chip in on the vaping thing, right? Because I work with a lot of youths that vape lah. And actually, I know, but I never confront them about it. But what the programs I do work with these youths, right? They end up confessing to me with no problem that they actually vape. And they actually tell me how they get the vape, and they tell me the whole process lah, because it's quite funny. It's only because we created that safe space for them to confess to us, and it's just a 4-week program, and they confess this major thing that they do in their life. And what I've learned from working with them and all the research I've done is that, like what Dr. Lambert mentioned, it makes them feel something. It's a coping mechanism. And usually, as teens and children are growing up, right, they're not taught how to cope with their emotions healthily, especially in the Asian culture that we have. Usually, we are not taught with these kind of tools. They don't have these tools to manage their anger, their sadness, their anxieties, and they turn to vaping and smoking and drinking to get that sort of release. But what these teens don't realize is it's just a temporary release that can have detrimental effects on their health in the long term. So I think what will help is that instead of confronting your child head on, oh, I know you're vaping, it's more of letting your child know that you still love them and offering them an olive branch and letting them know, check in on them. And I think after a while, they will actually come to you and tell you actually something is going on, I'm not very happy, or maybe they'll even tell you that they've been vaping. I think home needs to be a safe space, and often enough, children, they have a lot of things going on, and youths as well. They turn to vaping just that small survival kind of tactic lah. Yeah, because a lot of them tell me oh, when I'm stressed, I can smoke 1 pack or 2 pack a day, which can shock you, but it just makes me wonder because they haven't had the tools they haven't learned the tools in order to help them cope healthily about these addictions. Yeah.
So thanks very much for sharing, panelists. I hope this provides some form of reassurance to the viewers out there. So actually, we do have quite a few comments that we are seeing about parental controls. So for this, perhaps let's hear from Dr. Yvonne.
Okay, for me, right, the best form of accountability, right, is a safe relationship. Because if a parent can handle the truth, whatever I tell mom and dad can handle the truth, in that they don't become reactive, they don't become angry, or they don't be rendered helpless oh dear, why are you spending so much time? Do you know what's going to happen? I think if they know mom and dad emotionally can handle the truth, and they can handle how much they are about to share, I think that's the start of accountability. Because when the kid starts hiding, it's because somewhere in their psyche, they have decided, mommy and daddy cannot handle the truth. If I tell them, it's just going to be either trouble for them in that they're going to get worried, or it's trouble for me because they're going to give me some sort of consequence and punishment. But the notion of accountability, right, it's not to punish. The notion of accountability is to help the child keep track of what's happening in his or her life so that he or she can make better decisions. So for me, the best accountability, like what Claudia said, is a safe relationship where mommy and daddy can handle and respond adaptively to what the child has to say.
Thank you, Dr. Yvonne. Claudia and Dr. Lambert, do you have anything to add on to Dr. Yvonne's comment?
Okay, so just chipping in. I think in some of the patients that I see in a clinical setting, that echoes very strongly as well. When the parents are able to handle it, when both parents are sort of on the same line, on the same page, that's where it actually helps the most, when they are both in agreement that they can manage their emotions well. This sort of rubs off onto the child. Then they are more willing to share, they are more willing to be open about their experiences when the parents are on the same page, and when they are also in a way accountable to the child. So the child learns from the actions of the parents. So if they feel that the parents are managing their own emotions well and can take that stress, then they would mirror that and be able to relate to you better. Yeah, so I see that quite often in the patients I treat as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Lambert. So we have our very last question of the day.
No, as I was reading this, I'm kind of trying to recall some of these individuals that I have worked with a very rigid mindset about certain things. Actually, when I kind of sit down and when I try and understand, for example, right, they would actually one of the young people I work with, right, basically use all her savings, right, to basically I guess to give it to a particular cost. But when I sat down and try and understand her perspective of why she did certain things, sometimes they do believe in a cause and they really are very passionate about it, and they do want to help a certain group of people whom they perceive to be marginalized. I think that is to be celebrated. But I guess it's when in their helping, they start putting other people down, or they start basically, judging other people who may not be on the same boat as them. And that's where it causes a lot of social tension. I think it takes a lot of time for them to understand that different people, I guess, see things differently. And with me, it was a journey of several months, I think, of helping them see that different people perceive the situation differently. If we could harness, right, really their passion, they can actually do really good stuff, for the people around them whom they think are hurting or whom they think may be marginalized. I think the challenge is, how do we not tip over such that if I'm not on the same page, or I have a slightly different narrative, they start putting people down. That part of it, to be honest, it requires a lot of expansion of their social perspective and having countless conversations to help them see some things differently. For me, there's no easy answer. It is really conversations upon conversations to expand perspective.
Okay, so that's very interesting, Dr. Yvonne. So Dr. Lambert and Claudia, do you have any final comments to add on to this question?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, I feel like my parent would probably relate to this. It's quite funny. Okay, so I think I noticed this about myself. So usually when teens have very strong opinions about the world and social injustices, right, it's usually because a part of it calls out to them because of the pain that they've gone through in their own life. So then the way they come across advocating for these marginalized groups actually has to do with a lot of the pain that they have gone through themselves. So because they resonate with it very deeply, it can come across as like they're being very difficult, or doesn't align, they're being very rude and stuff like that. So what I've learned for myself is that because I deeply resonate with the work that I do because of some of the challenges that I have gone through similarly to the youths I work with, it has to take some sort of self-awareness in me to realize that actually I need to respect that people come from different backgrounds, different worlds, and not everyone will have the same perceptions as me. And it'll take your child probably a while to realize for herself as well, like how she is actually projecting this pain she's going through into like a very strong thing she's very passionate about. But as Dr. Yvonne mentioned, it's actually to be celebrated about that she's very passionate about helping like the world and marginalized communities and groups. Is really very good. But I think there is a part of her that is definitely hurting inside, and it's worth for her to look more inward in herself, into what's bothering her a lot about it. And maybe for you as her parent, you can maybe try to dig a bit deeper and ask her thoughtful questions like, where has this passion come from? What instigated it? and like be more curious about how it started. And then you can dive deeper from there. Because I really think that things that call out to us, right, can come from the greatest pains that we have in our life lah. Yeah, so that could be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Claudia, for sharing, your personal experiences when working with teens. And I think it's very important to also come from the empathetic angle when interacting with teenagers. So thank you to all our viewers for your very active participation. We really, really appreciate all your questions. We are sorry that we have overran by a bit today, but we really wanted to take as many questions as we could manage. So thank you very much for staying with us. We hope today's session offered communication strategies for you to engage your teens meaningfully, as well as provide useful insights on teen trends and tips on how we can communicate better with our teenagers. So parents, you are your child's first and best teacher. Your support is crucial to their development at any stage, including their teen years. So as our teens go through this phase, your unconditional support, unwavering care, and utmost patience with them and yourself is key, as our panelists have shared today. So before we end, right, could I just invite the panelists once again to share a few words on how parents should also consider their own self-care. Perhaps we can start with Dr. Yvonne.
So I think parents, we all want to get it right all the time, but it's almost impossible to get it right all the time. It's okay to make some mistakes. It's okay that we sometimes make a blunder or two. It's okay sometimes where we have some relational rupture with our children. But wake up each morning, love yourself, love your child. I think if you could hold a mindset that we don't have to be perfect parents, I think that's really a good start for self-care.
Dr. Lambert.
I would like to say that there's a child inside every one of us. So I think don't let this child grow out of you, because this child inside you is very important to enable you to relate to your kid better. Yeah, don't ever let that kid go away. Yeah.
Claudia.
I think for me, I'm not a parent yet, but I think for me it's like I noticed myself mirroring a lot of my parents' behavior because they are my first point of contact, right? They've taught me everything that I've known. I think that by parents taking care of yourself, right, you're teaching your child that, okay, it's very important to take care of me because you're doing it for yourself. So basically treating yourself the way that you should be treated, right? So I think it's very important for you to consider your own self-care, fill up your own cup, because your child is watching you, your child is learning from you. And if you do that, your child will probably do that to themselves as they grow up. Yeah.
So thanks very much, panelists. I think all these are really, really wise words of wisdom. So on the note of being kind to ourselves, drawing strength from the child inside all of us, right? And filling our own cup, we would like to say a huge thank you today to all our panelists for joining us today, and also our viewers back at home for joining us tonight. So let's see parenting as a journey of growth where we seek progress instead of perfection. Also, just some last words. We have posted some resources in the comment section below to help you on your parenting journey. So in particular, we want to bring your attention to our newly launched Parenting for Wellness toolbox with useful tips on how to better parent your child and to connect with your child. So this e-resource has actually been made available on Parents Gateway since the 10th of October. So please do check it out. So if you'd like to hear more expert voices on this topic of parenting with teens, comment more in the comment section box below so that we can run more sessions like this. So with that, thank you once again and see you at our next Facebook Live session. Good night.